In this video we're going to be completing the house by modelling the windows, which are an important part of the whole design. Each segment of the exterior surface is broken up into subtly different panels, creating an elaborate grid pattern. We'll start with the rear windows because they are all the same and therefore easier to make, but it'll give you a good idea of how we're going to approach modelling the windows for the rest of the building. So let's go to the back of the building. Now the first thing we need to create is a piece of geometry that's going to fit perfectly into one of these window panels. So let's go to a new mesh layer. We'll hide everything else. With the cube tool, I'm going to create a piece of geometry that's 9 feet on the Y, 6 feet 5 inches on the Z, and 1.5 inches on the X. So now we need to get into position. So let's go to the framework layer, select one of the columns and hide everything else. Go back into this layer. Now make sure the background shading is as wireframe, make things easier. Now go to Snaps and Precision, drag Snap Rigid, make sure the mode is on vertex and the layers on background. And we'll just move this over and we need to snap it to there. So now we can unhide that and then go back into this layer. So next I want to create 2 edge loops that are exactly 1 inch in from the side. So I'm going to select 2 polygons, Alt-C, have the mode of symmetry and the count as 2. Put a couple of edges in, drop the tool, and then select all the polygons around the middle. Let's run absolute scaling and change the Z distance to 6 feet and 3 inches and explicit scale. Now if I bring back the framework, we need to bevel this polygon out so it just comes in front of the column. So hit the B key and I want to bevel it out 0.75 or 3/4 of an inch. Next we want to create a 1 inch border right around this. So I'll select the front and the back polygon, hit the B key, and we'll just inset it by 1 inch. But at the top we need it to come down 1 inch below the roof. So if we select those 2 edges, hit the W key, and we can just move that down exactly 4. So the windows are broken up into a number of different equal segments, but the segment at the bottom is smaller than the rest of them, and it's actually the height of the floor. So if I go to my left hand view, I'm going to zoom in so my grid goes to 2 inches. I'm going to run the slice tool. Now I know that the floor is 10 inches up. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And I'll put an edge right across there. So next we can dice this up to define the windows. So I'm going to select 2 polygons, Alt-C, the count of 2, mode of symmetry, 2 edges in, select the loop in the middle, we'll run absolute scaling, scale it to 2 inches on the Z, then we'll select 2 polygons this way, Alt-C again, this time have a count of 5 and the mode is uniform. That defines the windows, and if we come to the back, we'll just select these polygons, hit the B key, make sure group polys is turned on, and we'll bevel that in by 1.5 inches. Now when it comes to beveling windows, it's a very good idea to utilize macros inside of Modo, particularly if you're beveling things to exact distances, because if you're doing that over and over again it can get very fiddly. So what I'm going to do through the process of modeling the windows on these back windows is develop some macros that we can use for the rest of the building. So the first bevel is a 1/2 inch bevel with a 0.2 chamfer on it. So I'm going to select one of these polygons, front and back. I'll go to System, Record Macro. I'm going to hit the B key for the bevel tool. Now I want to make a point of having group polys turned off. So if I just leave the default setting, that won't be saved to the macro. So I'm going to make a point of turning it on and then off again. Click in the viewport. I want to inset it by 0.3 of an inch. Shift click, inset it by 0.2 of an inch, and then shift it by minus 0.2 of an inch. Drop the tool. We've got System, Recording Macro, that stops the recording, and then we've got System, Save to File. Now save it in your scripts folder, which is in the same location as your license key, and I'll just call this 0.5 and G off. So next is a 1-inch bevel with group polys turned off. So I'm going to select those 4 polygons, System, Record Macro, hit the B key, make sure group polys is off, click in the viewport. We'll inset that by 0.8 of an inch, shift click, inset it by 0.2 of an inch, and shift it by minus 0.2 of an inch. Stop the recording and then save it. Next one we want to do is a 1-inch bevel with group polys turned on this time. So I'm going to select these 3 polygons, Record Macro, B key, turn group polys on, click in the viewport, we'll inset it by 0.8 of an inch, shift click, inset it by 0.2 of an inch, and shift it by minus 0.2 of an inch. Drop the tool, stop the recording, and save that one. 1G on. Now there's one more macro that we might need, and that's a 1/2-inch bevel with group polys turned on. So I'm going to record that anyway. So select polygon, record macro, B key, make sure group polys is on, and then we'll inset that by 0.3 of an inch, shift it, shift click, 0.2 of an inch, and minus 0.2. So drop that tool, we'll save that macro, call that 0.5 G on, and then we can just, with Control Z, we'll just undo that bevel. So now we can define the windows. So I'm going to select the top 4 in the front and back, Control C to copy, and we'll paste those in a new layer, hit the M key, and we'll give it the material of glass. And if you go to the shade tree, you can just set the transparency to, say, 80%. Okay, go back into the other layer, and then we can go through and bridge all of these. So then we can cut the windows back into that layer, and now we need to clone it. So we've got to duplicate, clone, click in the viewport, and we need 3 clones, and we need the offset distance to be 6 feet 5.5 inches. So that's the rear windows done, but before I move on I want to create a pie menu so I can access those macros really quickly when I'm working on the rest of the building. So let's go to System Form Editor, create new pie template, and we'll call that Bevels. Expand it, go to Unknown Command and type in the first one, which is at 05G on dot LXM, and in the label put 0.5 of an inch group on, just need to make it a bit more descriptive, and on the next one at 05G off dot LXM, and in the label 0.5 group off. Next one at 1G on dot LXM, label 1 inch group on, and finally at 1G off dot LXM. Okay, so what I could do now is go to the top, right click, assign to key, select a key, and now we have a little pie menu so we can access those bevels whenever we need them. Now the front window is a little more complicated in that each one is subtly different. So what we're going to do is build the frame the same way as we did with the rear windows, clone it along, and then work on each individual section in turn. So let's go to a new mesh item. We'll hide everything else and we'll create our frame. And this time it's 17 feet on the Y, 6 feet 5 inches on the Z, and 1.5 inches on the X. And then we need to snap it into place like we did before. So I've been through exactly the same process as I did on the rear windows, creating two edges on either side 1 inch in, beveling the front polygon out 3/4 of an inch, then beveling the front and back polygon in 1 inch, and then bringing the top edges down 4 inches. And this is where things start to get a little bit different. I go to my front view, I'm going to run the slice tool. I'm just going to bring 4 edges straight across, and in edge mode I'm going to double click on the bottom one, go to vertex, set position, and on the Y I want it to be 7 feet and 9 inches. Double click on the next one, set position, it's going to be 7 foot 11 inches. Whoops. It's better. 7 feet 11 inches, and on the next one it's going to be 8 feet and 9 inches, and on this one 8 feet and 11 inches. So what we've created there is a little central section which is a different scale to all of the other panels. So now we can dice this up. So loop slice, count to 2 in symmetry, 2 edges in there, select it and then scale it. I want it to be 2 inches on the Z, and then we'll scale it, dice it up this way, count of 5, and the mode is uniform, and we'll do it in there as well. So that's our window template, and now we need to clone this along. So we'll go to duplicate, clone, click in the viewport. We need 6 clones, and we need the offset to be -6 feet 5.5 inches. Now this third segment in is slightly different because it's an entire window, so we need to make a small change. I'm going to double click on that edge loop and hit backspace. That's because we only want one thick horizontal segment there to make the frame. So let's go around the back, and now we need to bevel in the back. So in polygon mode, I'm going to select all of those and all of those. Make sure you leave that row of polygons in the middle. Then on the third one, we just want to select those. The fourth one, we just select the top. This one, we need to select all of that. The next one, we want to select everything, because that's just one big window. So make sure you select those polygons down the middle. And on this one, we just want to select those. Okay, so hit the B key, group polys on, and we'll bevel it in by 1.5 inches. So now we can use those macros to bevel in all the windows. So make this selection, both front and back, bring up your pie menu, and we want to bevel that in with 0.5 of an inch with group polys off. So next make this selection, both front and back, but there's no need to select the back polygons along that central line. Now this time, if I bring up my pie menu, I'm going to use 1 inch group off. Next make this selection, both front and back, and this time we're going to run 1 inch group on. So make this selection front and back, and this is basically all the windows. Control C to copy, go to a new mesh layer, Control V to paste, hit the M key, give it the glass material, go back into this layer, and now we need to bridge all of these windows. So when you've bridged all of those windows, we can start working on each individual section, because they're all subtly different. So let's start with this end. Now these two actually need to appear to be one piece at the top. So in polygon mode, I'm going to select these polygons in here, duplicate and bridge, and I'm going to do the same with these. So selecting two polygons, hitting the up arrow to expand the selection. Hold down Shift and do the same here. And bridge. So next select all of the polygons on the front of that piece. Hit the B key, have group polys turned on, and we want to bring it out by 0.3 of an inch. Then select all of the polygons on the back of that section, hit the B key, and this time offset it by 2¼ inches. Now this section actually needs to go in, so I'm going to select these polygons, shift and the up arrow twice, and then I'll just deselect all of these. Then I'm going to hit delete, and in edge mode double click to select the edge loop and then deselect these edges, and then I'm going to run the bridge tool. Now this one here needs to come out, so select the front, the B key, and we'll bring that out by 0.3 of an inch. Then select all the polygons on the back of those two sections, hit the B key, and we'll bevel that in 2.25. Now this section here is going to become the front door. So in polygon mode, select two polygons, Alt-C, count of 1 and the mode is free. And we'll put an edge in at the top, just to create the top of the door frame. Then I'm going to select the polygons on the front and the back, bring up the pie menu, run 1/2 inch with group on. Then I'm going to cut that into a new mesh layer, hit the R key, and I'm going to scale it down to make a thinner door. Then I'm going to, in edge mode, double click on both edge loops and run bridge. And then I'm going to select the front and the back, bring up my pie menu and run 1/2 inch with group off. Then I'm going to copy those polygons into the glass layer, give it the glass material, go back into this layer, and then we can bridge these. Now if you want to, using the same techniques that we used in the second video for the upstairs doors, we could put a little door handle in there and open the thing up. But make sure you copy the windows for the door into that layer before you do it. So one last thing, let's cut that into here, and then edge mode, we're just going to double click on those two edge loops and bridge them to complete the door frame. So one last bit of detail that you can put in to finish off the frame is just to bevel in the back of these thicker window frames. So I've selected them with the B key and we'll just bevel them back by about 1 inch. The final thing to make are a couple of tension cables that cross on this panel to form a lovely motif. So with the cube tool, I'll create a cube that is 1 inch on both the X and the Z, and I'm going to rotate it around so the ends of that cube are pointing at the corners. And I'm going to select two end polygons, hit the B key, bevel that out, shift click, bevel that there, hit the R key for the scale tool and we'll scale that down. Select two polygons, Alt-C, we'll put an edge in there, and another edge in there. Select that loop of polygons, B key again, bevel that out, R key, and we'll scale it. Select the front and the back polygons, B key again, and we'll inset it, and then bridge. So I've come to the front view and also a wireframe view. I'm just going to select the two end pieces, and with the selection action center and the scale tool, I'm just going to scale it so those two pieces hit the corner. Now you may need to move this around a bit so it fits. So deselect those end edges and just tweak it. Now we want this piece to be rounded, so we can achieve that just by hitting the Tab key. And just to define it more, select two polygons, Alt-C, count of 2 and symmetry mode. Two edges in there, two in there, two in there, two in there, two in there, and another two in there, but not at the ends, sort of in the middle slightly. And then finally two in there. Now go to the front view, select it, Control C, Control V, hit the E key, and just rotate that around. Go to the perspective view, zoom in, and in edge mode I'm just going to select that edge loop, hit the W key, and just move that over so it's sitting on top of that one. So change the background view to flat shade, and then we can just move this back till it sits on that surface, and then we can select polygon at the end of each piece, shift and the up arrow, W key, and we'll move that down. There we go. So the last thing to do is to select the cross and also the windows, and we'll cut those into that layer. So we're going to create the side out of a single piece of geometry. So let's go to a new mesh layer. I'll run the cube tool, drag out a polygon, and I want the height to be 17 feet and the Z distance to be 1.5 inches, and just leave the X dimension. Now we need to align it, so I'm just going to come into the framework layer, select those 4 frames, or 4 columns, hide everything else, and now I can snap this into place. So I'm going to run drag snap rigid, layer on background and the mode on vertex, grab that, and snap that into there. So I go back to the framework layer, I'll select that polygon, align work plane to selection, go back to this one, select that polygon, center selected on the Y, back to the framework, select that polygon, align work plane to selection, and align the other side. So next we need to dice this up, so I'm going to run slice tool, and I'm going to put 4 slices horizontally and 6 slices vertically. So now we need to position these, so in edge mode I'm going to double click on that, vertex set position, and on the Y I want that to be 7 feet 9 inches. This one needs to be 7 feet 11 inches. This one needs to be 8 feet 9 inches. and this one 8 feet 11 inches. Now the vertical edges need to be 3/4 of an inch inside the column. So I'm going to zoom in till my grid goes to 1/4 of an inch. Let's run a grid snap. Double click on that edge. I'll just bring it 3 in. On to the next one. Zoom in. Bring that 3 in. And 3 in that side. And repeat that process for these edges as well. Now before we can move on, we can use this base template on the other side. So I'm going to copy it into a new mesh layer, and we'll just move it off along there and hide it. So select these polygons, miss out that edge in the middle, but then here we need to select these 4 to join those 2 segments. We'll hit the B key and we'll offset it by 3/4 of an inch. Deselect those, then select these ones again, leaving the edge, and just select this top polygon here, and also select the corresponding polygons on the back. Hit the B key again, and we need to inset it by 1 inch. And if we select the top edge, and we'll bring that down by 4 inches. Next we can define the windows. So Alt-C, counter 2 and symmetry. Put 2 edges into both of those sections. Then we'll select the central one, and then with absolute scaling, we'll scale it to 2 inches on the X. Select 2 that way, Alt-C again, counter 5 and the mode is uniform, edges across there, and edges across there. So come around to the back of that section and make this selection. Hit the B key and we'll bevel that in minus 1.5. So make this selection both front and back, bring up the pie menu and run 1/2 inch group off. Hold down Control and deselect those 2. Copy those into a new mesh layer, hit the M key and give them the glass material, then go back into here, select these 6, bring up the pie menu and run 1 inch bevel, and now we can bridge the windows. Now make this selection at the front and we'll bevel that out by 0.3 of an inch. And make this selection at the back and bevel this out by 2¼ inches. And then come back round to the front. Select this row of polygons just underneath that section, and we're going to bevel that out by 3 inches, and then go to edge mode and select the edge on the top. And this is a runner for a window or a door that slides open. I'll just bring that down. Now this panel here is going to become the sliding door, so I'm going to select the polygons on both sides, hit the B key for the bevel tool, and I'll inset it by 1/2 inch, drop the tool, then I'm going to run my 1 inch group on macro, then shift and the up arrow twice, and Control X to cut, and we'll paste that into a new layer. So go back into that layer, and we'll just bridge those 2 edge loops and then go back into this layer. In edge mode, double click on those two edge loops, run bridge, then go into polygon mode, select the front and the back, Control C to copy, go into the Windows layer, Control V to paste, and then give those the glass material. Go back into here, select them again, and bridge. Go back into the Windows layer and select them, and cut those back into that layer. And now we can move this sliding door and open it. So this section is another door, but this time it's solid. So like I did on the front, I'm going to select two polygons with loop slice, just put an edge at the top to define the frame. Then select the polygons on the front and the back. And from my pie menu, I'm going to run 1/2 inch group on. Then I'm going to cut those polygons into a new mesh layer. Double click on those two edge loops and bridge. And then run the scale tool and just scale that door in slightly. And go back into that layer, double click on those two edge loops and bridge, and then you can cut that back into there, and you could always open it and also put a door handle on it. So I've copied a handle onto that door, and I've copied the door and all the windows into one layer, and now we can start working on the other side. So I'm going to go to the framework layer, unhide everything, and then I'm going to double click on the column on this side and hide everything else. Let's hide that, and we'll select the layer that we copied earlier on. Now the problem here is we need to get this aligned exactly into that column. So what I'm going to do is select that polygon, align my work plane to that selection, go back into this layer, and now we're going to use a combination of drag snap rigid and also a grid snap. So let's run drag snap rigid, and by default that has a geometry snap active with it. What we're going to do is run a grid snap, and you can see it change. So I'm going to click on that corner point, and then I'm simply just going to move this back until it snaps to the grid. And because you've aligned the work plane to that polygon, it essentially zeroes the grid at that point. That's quite a useful little trick to know. So now we can select one of these polygons and we'll bevel those by 3/4 inch. Then we'll select these ones and also the same at the back, and we'll bevel those in 1 inch. And then we'll select the edges at the top and move them down 4 inches. Now these are slightly different from the other side in that we need to split this one off. So I'm going to select two polygons there, Alt-C, put an edge roughly in the middle, select that edge, then go to Edge and Split. Then in polygon mode, double click on that side and hide it. Now on this side, go to Edge mode, double click on those two edge loops and hit Backspace. Then double click on that edge, hit the W key, and we'll move that up 2 inches. So select the 4 polygons on the back, hit the B key, and we'll bevel that in by 1.5 inches. And then we need to dice it up. So select 2 polygons, Alt-C, count of 1, and the mode is uniform. Put one edge in through there, another edge through there, and then select 2 edges that way, and this time have a count of 3. So select all of these polygons, both front and back, bring up your pie menu and run 1/2 inch group off. Then we'll copy those to another layer, hit the M key, give the glass material, go back into here, and then we can bridge. Now, like the other side, this section is a window that opens and slides along, so we need to create the runner. So I'll start by smoothing this bit off, select those 3 polygons and delete them, double click on the edge loop, deselect those two edges, and then bridge. And we'll select two polygons that way, Alt-C, and we'll put a single edge loop right around to split it. And select that row of polygons, hit the B key, and with group polys active, we'll bevel it by 3 inches. And select that edge loop, and we'll bring it down. Then select those polygons, and I'm going to bring up my pie menu and run 1/2 inch group on. Copy those into the window layer, give them the glass material, and then I can bridge that big window. So now select those 4 polygons, and I'm going to run 1 inch group on. Shift and the up arrow twice. Let's cut that into a new mesh layer. Bridge those 2 edges. Go back into here and bridge those 2 edges. And we can move this up and along. Select those 2, copy those into the glass layer, give them the material, and then we can bridge that section. So now we can do the final section. So unhide it, select it, and then hide everything else, and we'll go to the back view. So we need to add a couple of new edges in here. So I've got the Mesh Edit Slice tool, put 2 edges across there, and then I'm going to zoom in until my grid square goes to 1 inch. In Edge Mode, double click on this edge loop, run a grid snap, and then the Move tool, and we'll bring that up 2 inches. So I'm going to position these on slightly differently. I'm going to select that edge loop, run a geometry snap, have the layer set to foreground on the mode as auto, hit the W key, I'm going to move it to the top so it snaps to the top of that piece of geometry. I drop the Move tool and rerun it, and that one I can move it down to a specific dimension. So I can move it down to 19 inches, and I can do the same with this one. Move this down 15 inches. So come around to the back, I'll select 2 polygons, Alt-C for loop slice, put 2 edges in there, and then select that central loop. Go to absolute scaling and scale it to 2 inches on the X. Then select these polygons, hit the B key, plug in the viewport, make sure you've got group polys active, and bevel it in by 1.5 inches. Come around to this side, double click in there, select those 2 polygons, Alt-C, count to 5 and uniform. So then we can select these polygons, bevel 1/2 inch group off, copy, and we'll paste those into the window layer, give them the window material, and then we can bridge. And select those 2 polygons and run 1 inch group on. Then select these polygons on the front and the back and run 1/2 inch group on. Now we can copy those into the window material, window layer, give the glass material back into here, and then we can bridge those 2 sections. So unhide that, and then we'll cut the windows and the door into that layer, and then we'll select all of those windows and we'll cut them into a single layer, which we'll rename Windows. Go back into the framework layer and unhide everything. I'm going to turn my background shading to flat shade. I'm going to go to the upper floor layer, and we just need to check that nothing is crossing. Now, you can see there how that polygon from the upper floor is right at the edge of that column. So we just want to move that in so we can't see it. And I'll do the same here. And the same at the back. And also, you might find that this wall is cutting into the window frame at the front. So I'm going to go to the framework layer, and we can just move that back so you can see the frame. So that completes the Eames house, or at least part of the Eames house, as there are a number of other buildings associated with it in reality. So what have I learned through this process? Well, first of all, when working with dimensions, it's never assume anything. Believe the dimensions you've been given until you can prove them wrong, and this tripped me up a number of times. To model well to dimensions, you have to be very disciplined and methodical. I was reminded of a conversation I had with Richard Woolsgrove, who's an architectural visualizer at London Architects KPF. And he told me that when you're placing something, there are a million places where it could be, but only one place where it should be. Now, when you're doing this kind of modelling, I think that should be written on the wall. The other thing I learnt was how powerful the work plane is in Modo. It's a concept borrowed from CAD applications, but placed in a polygon environment, it becomes an unbelievably flexible tool that allows you to work both accurately and at the same time creatively. Once you get to grips with it and start blending it with various tool pipe combinations, Modo suddenly becomes much more than just another polygon modelling application.